it's gonna happen kind of as it happens, and I'm making the plan up as I go. On the home stretch, final bit of cutting. Of course, it's stuck to the table. That's all right. Hello everyone, welcome back to Maverick Mods. On the Firebird again this week, and made some pretty good progress. Time to put in the glass, but in order to do that, I've got to finish the dash. So that's kind of what we're focusing on this week. So grab your popcorn, let's get started. I'm down to the final two things in adapting the 4th gen Camaro Firebird interior into the 2nd gen here. That is top of the dash and the door panels. Of course, you watched me do the door panels before. Top of the dash, of course, the shape is just completely and totally different. The only thing that did fit was width-wise, it was the right width. Everything else was custom on this, and as will be the top of the dash. I had to keep the portion here because I wanted to keep the cluster, and I needed the mount inside for the cluster. That all fits, everything's good. But I've got to blend the top of the dash in. And so here's my plan. Well, okay, I have a plan. I can't really talk too much about the plan because the plan's going to happen as I do it. But the basics of it is I've got a template here that is, this is going to be fiberboard. It's going to cover what used to be the metal top portion of the dash on the original Firebird, the forward portion, not the instrument cluster side. So I'm going to cut that out of fiberboard, and then I'm going to fill this in. Well, just watch me. Hi guys, well, I just finished installing some rib nuts in the top of the dash here. The reason why will be apparent as I put my first part of my top piece, top part of the dash in place. And our idea here, I've got 1024 rib nuts in place, which will screw in top down, and this will hold this. It'll hold it down. All right, so let me go ahead and get these in place, and then we'll take a look at it. So here's my fiberboard. The fiberboard is going to be covered with the leather material just like the rest of the interior. My securing bolts here are going to hold the front of what will become the top of the dash down. I'm going to embed some fender washers glue some fender washers to the fiberboard, and then that will be covered with the leather, and then the screw will go on top of that. That'll hold it down. I'm now going to start shaping the foam, which will blend the top of my dash to the fiberboard. But these are just here to hold the front of the new dash in place. I did set them back enough to be able to access them when the glass is in. I did try and take care of that. Probably won't use an Allen head. I'll probably just use a regular bolt. We'll see. The only thing I can't use is a Phillips because you can't get a Phillips down in there. But I should be able to come in, if I ever need to take the dash off, I should be able to come in and just remove these, and that will loosen the top of the dash. This entire structure as it is molded together. One of the last things I have to fabricate on the dash, I gotta clean this thing. Well, anyway, where was I? One of the last things I have to fabricate on the dash is kind of a cover for where the old passenger airbags sat. Obviously, I can't put the passenger airbag in here. There's just no room for it. But I've got to cover the opening. So my solution to that was So I fabricated myself a piece of sheet metal. It's going to sit right there. Okay, obviously I know there's a gap here. I'm going to fill this piece to be flush with the top of my fiberboard here. To integrate everything, this piece not only is going to cover the opening, it is also going to be kind of the last support piece. This part of the dash has got just a little bit of movement here. And so this piece, when it's secured in, will kind of finish the support structure for this side of the dash. Problem is, in order to make the dash removable for somebody in the future, hopefully that's never me, but for somebody, this piece has got to be removable, because once if I were just to say bolt this in, make it solid, and then cover it, this is the only portion of the dash that would be permanently secured without a way to access the bolts anywhere in the dash. So we can't have that. So I had a problem. If I bolt this in with the intent of it being able to be removable, obviously I have to get to the bolts or the screws to be able to remove it. But once I cover this, I've either got some very unsightly bolts. I'm going to have 3 here, and there's just no way to avoid that. But I'd have them up here too. And once I get the filler up in here, it would kind of cover up those bolts anyway. So my solution was, I just put rib nuts in this piece so that it can be bolted from underneath. I can reach up under here with no problem to get to and put some screws or bolts up through my holes here. This can be bolted up from underneath on the top, and they can be accessible. And these 3 here, there's no other way. There are going to be 3 screw heads here, and I'll come up with some kind of a decorative fastener for that. I've got my whatever these things are, rib nut bolts. I've got everything bolted from the bottom. This will have to come out once I get it shaped, because I'll have to cover it. But this is all just to get everything set up and lined up. All I need to do now is line up the bottom. For now, I'm just using self-tappers, which I've already tapped once. There we go. One more. All right. Again, I'll put decorative screws in the bottom here. These will be covered up by the fabric. So now that that's in, it's secure. The dash is as solid as it's ever going to be. We're good there. And I've got my HVAC controls in. Everything's set underneath. And on this side, kind of the last piece of the puzzle as I'm working on the dash here will be get my wiring harness mounted up, my body control computer or my body control module mounted, and get my glove box in. And interior is getting a lot closer. Next up on the dash, I'm going to have to make my interface along here all the way across and up in here. I'm going to use kind of a combination of foam, once in a while a little Bondo, a little fiberglass to tie everything together. It's going to happen kind of as it happens, and I'm making the plan up as I go. I got held up doing other projects, and I'm getting back to the dash now. It's a good thing I got held up with those other projects, though, because I didn't realize this, but I'm having some problems with this fiberboard, probably reacting to moisture in the air. I don't think, upon reflection, this is going to be a good material, so it's going to come off. I'm going to use this as a template. I think I'm going to make this bottom plate out of just sheet metal. Well, I found a piece of, well, it's an old piece of flashing that's galvanized. It'll work in a pinch. The problem is it wasn't quite wide enough to do the whole thing in one piece. Not a problem. I have a welder. Yeah, I know it's galvanized, I know, but it'll still work. And so I've got the first half of it cut out, and I've got my alignment marks. I'm going to cut the second half out, or mark the second half, cut it out, and then we'll just weld everything together. I got my piece cut, welded together, test fit, everything's good. Just to keep metal to metal contact down to a minimum, I'm going to use some of the same foam I used on the package shelf. Just underneath here, there's a method to my madness, you'll see here in a minute. A little bit of spray foam. Hope I got enough left. Can's getting kind of empty. And then this piece is going to go like that. Yep, okay. All right, we'll let that tack for a few seconds. Not quite. Let's give it a try. See if I can lay this down without screwing it up completely. I think I got it. All right, I'm gonna let that sit for a minute, burn my holes, trim it, and let's test fit it. So what I'm about to do next, it might create quite a bit of debris, so I'm gonna see if I can't cover up as much as I can. Keep that to a minimum. So what I'm trying to do here, if I can do this, I'm going to make a cover that's going to kind of come down here. And I need to reshape this area right in here so that I've got a good transition. And the best, or so far about the best thing I've come up with so far, I've kind of done a preliminary shave on it. However, so far the best thing I've come up with about how to trim this down and shape it better is with my belt sander. This might not work. This may turn out to be a hot mess. We're about to find out. This thing is at least variable speed, so I'm going to kick it down on the lowest one I possibly can. Let's see how this works. I think that did pretty well. I'm going to clean my debris up to keep it from piling up too much, and take a look at it when I'm finished. Clean my mess up here. So the idea is, what I need to do next is I need to make a kind of a cover plate that goes from here and just blends down in here, and of course keeps the vent open, but the vent will blow kind of up here. So I need to form this cover plate. It's not going to go all the way to the top. It's going to go to probably about right there, and then I'll have a piece of foam, very thin 1/8 inch foam on top of that, and then I'll blend all of that. Might have to use some foam, might have to use some Bondo, things like that. And when everything's blended and smooth, then I can get the fabric on there. But first I need to make this plate. Let's see, I'm not sure where I left off on the last update. So let's see, I pre-positioned my cover, screwed it in, and then pulled this plate back off. I tack welded, because I can't have the screws continue down through the dash itself. So I tack welded this in to hold that. I'm temporarily screwing to the dash itself, and while I was off, I did put like a foam pad underneath this piece. I cut that foam pad back about 1/4 inch all the way around because the fabric is going to come down and it needs to wrap underneath. So next part of the puzzle, I'm going to pull each one of these screws out individually and replace them with pop rivets. Hopefully that plastic underneath is strong enough to allow this rivet head to break. I guess we'll find out. It is. All right. Okay, I'll get the rest of these removed, drilled out, and pop riveted, and we'll come back and look again. I've got my pop rivets in. I also added just a little bit of support just to this part of the dash right here as well. And just the same thing, I just welded it to my piece here. And otherwise, we're pretty much ready for a fill-in. Now what I'm going to do here, on my gaps like here, I've got to build up and come down. I've got to blend here. This part right here I can do with foam and maybe just a hint of Bondo in the low spots just to give it a smooth surface. But here, I'm going to use the same foam that I used to build out the rear interior panels. I'm going to sculpt this just to fill in here and up there and down in here so that it just kind of fills the gaps in. So I'll start with that and then probably a little bit of Bondo on top of that just to smooth things out. Let me start carving on this, see if I can get some pieces put in. So I'm about halfway through getting the first piece of filler foam set here. And basically all I did is I cut the back side of it to fit all my notches and everything I needed. Didn't have to be too precise on that. So I've got it fit here. I've got just enough height down to allow for foam on top of it when this is glued down. And at that point, I'm just shaping it a little bit at a time. You can kind of see I'm kind of blending it back so that it blends into the dash forward dash portion. And to give you an idea how I'm doing this, let's get over to the sander. So pardon the noise. Oh, whoop, that's the wrong piece. Grab the piece I'm actually working on. All I've got is just a tabletop belt sander here. And I'm just very gently just run it across the bottom. Just like that, working it a little bit at a time, kind of just gently rolling it to put that radius in there and test fitting it often. So let me finish this up and we'll take a look at it when it's done. I'm on round, what am I on? Round 2 of fixing the dash area. I've got my foam pieces secured, they're glued down. One of the things about this kind of foam is that it's essentially certain kinds of, well, I guess you call it chemicals, can eat the foam. For example, contact cement can just eat the foam away. Some of the spray-on adhesives, the chemicals or the whatever is in that can eat it away too. The one thing that won't eat the foam away is epoxy. So I mixed up some epoxy and just coated this so that anything I put on top of it will not eat through the foam. I had a little left over, so I mixed up some filler with the epoxy. That's what this is. So I'm just kind of blending this right here, and that just makes it a little bit easier for the fabric to, it won't show with any kind of rough spots. Now that I've got all the foam protected, I can actually switch over now to Bondo, because Bondo is one of the things that will eat through this foam because it's a polyester-based filler. Anyway, I do have to get the sander out and just kind of smooth this out a little bit, and I'll just kind of keep filling this in until I get a surface that is good enough that I can put the fabric over the top of it. I think I'm on the second coat of filler. Got that sanded down. Third coat is on now. Process for this at this point is just fill, sand, until it does until it looks like the way I want it to look. So I'll spare you that. It will come back when I've got it finalized, ready for fabric. Here we are. The dash is ready for fabric. Everything's smoothed out. Transitions feel good. There's the fabric. And I've got a fairly large piece. Unfortunately, it's not wide enough to fit the entire width of the dash. But this piece right here is kind of, I just always assumed that most of it would go to waste. So I'm going to kind of work it, find the, kind of catty corner, figure out a place where this will fit this the best. And at this point, it's start gluing. I'm going to glue probably up here to begin with, and then I'll take my screws out, go forward, fold it under. When all that's done, then I'll continue out with this section right here. I'm not going to show the entire gluing of the fabric down. You notice I am using contact cement here, and there's, again, sometimes I say this a lot, but there's a method to my madness. Spray adhesive would work here, but I'm also dealing with what might be kind of high heat areas, and I think that for purposes of longevity, I might be a little bit better using contact cement. Again, I'm kind of doing a narrow strip here, because the idea is once it's all the way across, then I can fold this back, do this, and then fold it up here and do the rest of it. All right, so we're covered there. Of course, your contact cement, you gotta let dry. So I need to let this dry, and then we'll fold it over and stick it down. All right, it has been a few minutes later. That's dry. So now, this first little section, couple of sections here, this is the important part. Just working it down, making sure I don't get any wrinkles, because that could throw it off up there. Just kind of watching what I'm doing down here. Doing some of this kind of by feel. All right, so right there, I kind of missed a little bit, so I'm gonna stop, add some more glue, so that I don't have any dry spots, or bare spots, I guess you could call it. And while I'm at it, I can go just a little bit farther up. All right, again, let's let that dry. Okay, we're dry. Let's try it again, or keep trying it, or whatever I'm doing. So I've got to try and keep that wrinkle from forming. Okay, now I'll go ahead and fold that over. Make sure we're down everywhere. Looks good, feels good so far. I've got this part done already. I did that off camera. Okay, we're up there. I'm going to go ahead and stretch that back out, make sure my alignment's still good, and then fold it back and keep working at it. All right, my alignment still looks good. All right, so I'll fold this back. This is gonna take hours, so I'm gonna just work on some progress reports as I get it going. Quick update. I've got everything secured along a line all across the dash. I'm working on the front edge now. What I'm doing here is, of course, I've got to get both sides covered with the contact cement, and on the top I've got it taped back so it dries without folding back down. On the bottom here I've got my screws out, and I've got my dash plate lifted up, a little bit of tape to protect the existing finish there, and I took and I covered everything with contact cement and ran my brush underneath so that when I fold this back down I can trim it and then fold the corners underneath here. From here on out, that's what I'm doing for the rest of this as well. There's going to be a lot of cussing, a lot of waiting, a lot of grunting. Who knows what else there's going to be, and we'll come back and look at this when I've got the front edge done. The front edge is done. So I need a little, oh, let's get a little dust on there. Where was I? Front edge is done. So I've got everything folded up under, secured down to, you know, about right there. And that'll just let me, I can go on the inside now, start pulling and stretching that down to cover the rest of the dash. But it looks pretty darn good. It turned out, except right around the VIN tag, which I think what I'm going to wind up doing here when I get everything finalized, maybe make up a little plate that just kind of covers. I couldn't get up underneath here to tuck the fabric underneath effectively. It just didn't work. So I think what I'm going to wind up doing on that is make a little cover plate that just covers where the opening is for the VIN tag. I think that'll work. Other than that, that's kind of the front edge. So basically the dash, covering the dash is, well, it's probably about 50%. I've still got to pull and form everything down toward the front of the dash too. So far looking good. Got the top of the dash finished up and wrapped around the front edge. We'll look at that here in a minute. But it's a little unsightly right around here around the VIN number. And like I said, I had problems just folding the fabric under and making it look good. So I came up with a solution. I just made up a little cover plate that is going to fit right there. Just made it out of sheet metal. Actually created a little bit of a dimple die to kind of fold the edges over to give it kind of a finished look. Obviously, it will look better with a little paint on it. So let's put some paint on it. And we're to the inside of the dash, which I just finished up. Got it wrapped around, tucked under my vent. Sorry for the light here, but it's just a little bit dark for a black interior. Tucked under my instrument bezel and across all the way there. I've got one spot right here that I need to finish gluing down and glue it a little bit better. Other than that, that's kind of where I had to make the transition because I can't make the fabric wrap all down around here. It just isn't going to work. So I figured this is kind of the least objectionable point. You can't hardly even see it. It's kind of what I was shooting for. And other than getting the plate on the VIN there, the dash, with the exception of my little cover plate there, is done. I got my little cover plate, I guess you'd call it trim. It's more like a trim piece. Surrounding the VIN number, I've got it painted and glued in. I just used some emblem adhesive to glue that in. Ought to be good enough for that. So, I still have to work on that one last little thing on the passenger side, but for all intents and purposes, the dash is done. And that opens up the next task, and that is we're going to put in the windshield, and shortly after that, the back glass. Guys, there's dozens, tens, hundreds, thousands of YouTube channels out there that can go into much more detail and have much more expertise than I do about installing a windshield. That having been said, it's been years since I did one using the old style urethane rope, or some people call it butyl tape. I don't really think it's butyl. I think it's actually urethane, but I digress. A couple of the windshields I've done in recent past have been urethane out of the tube, and on this car I decided to go ahead and do the old school, use the urethane rope, mainly because the height of the windshield, I'll show you. The windshield is sitting in, obviously it doesn't have any urethane on it yet, but the windshield is sitting in right now, and there's going to be a height that it needs to sit up in order for the trim to sit on top properly. And the factory spec on that is 3/8. So I've got some 3/8 urethane adhesive, or the urethane rope for this, and that'll keep that proper height so that the trim will look right when it's on. What I've got to do now is I've got the windshield in place without the urethane so that I can pre-position it, mark where the rope is going to go around the perimeter on the glass, and also mark where the glass is going to fit the best and be positioned properly, and then I can put tape marks along there as well in order to be able to put it back in place, kind of a one shot, and press it in and be done. So here we go. Let's fast forward a little bit through, just checking, marking, measuring, etc. Now that I've got the windshield back out, now it's upside down, and now that it's positioned properly, what I need to do is I need to clean the heck out of the inside of it, especially the edges. And a couple of things, the little trimmer chaining clips, definitely easier to put those in prior to putting the windshield in. Other than that, gonna clean this up, get it ready, get the butyl on it, and we'll be ready to go back in. Okay. And if we fuck this up, butyl tape isn't that expensive. All right, so what we want to do is just kind of get it right at the very top of that bumper, and there's some alignment marks. Just kind of, yeah. How are you looking over there? Very good. Okay. I love neat and take your hand away. I'm just looking. There you go. All we gotta do is just drop it in. That's it. You know, we just kind of push it down.
Pretty warmed up.
Yeah, that's why I had that's why I did the tape marks here, and align. I can see my little Sharpie marks here. So as long as it's here, it's against these right here, it's and it just falls into place. One of the things after putting the windshield in also is to make sure that the windshield is at the right height. Getting your trim on, I've got it lined up. Sometimes it just takes a little persuasion. I'm going to have to work on this edge up here. Of course, this trim's going to come back out. This is just to check the height. Wow, this trim piece has got a little bit of damage to it. This is just to check the height, make sure the windshield's in at the right depth. It feels good. Let me put the trim on the other side. Let's take a look. Well, there it is. Like I said, height feels good all the way around. Trim feels good all the way around. Looking good there. My trim is, well, of course, this is going to get bodywork painted. Some of the corners don't, of course, this is a new roof, so the corners don't quite match up. I can work that and kind of relieve that and make them fit a little bit better. And of course, these will all come back off too, so because they'll need to be reworked and painted before final assembly. But it has a windshield. Even though most of this video is about finishing the dash, putting in windows, what I need to do before putting in the back glass is I need to address my roof to quarter panel interface and fill this in. Why, you ask? It's right back here. I could do this after the glass is in. I'd prefer not to, just because I'm gonna have to work some sandpaper around this edge. I don't want to take any chance with the glass. So just before I put the glass in, I'm gonna prep this area, put some of that metal filler in, and just work this back edge. I'm not worried too much about this right here. I'll do that later. I just want to work this back edge so I don't have to do it with the glass in. So It's already got epoxy primer on it, and I can put the metal filler directly over the epoxy primer. I just need to scuff it so that the filler has a good bite and a good tooth to stick to. So just doing it by hand. I'm using, what is this, 80 or 120, something like that. Just give it a good scratch. And just right here in the corner, just a little bit. It's not going to take a lot in these corners, but just enough to give it a finished edge. And same thing back here, just a little bit of a scratch around the radius here. I'll prep this, clean it, hit it with some wax and grease remover, and it'll be ready for filler. I've got my metal filler mixed up. This is different than Bondo. Well, okay, hang on. I gotta talk while I work here. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get as much in this kind of this crevice as I can, because you don't want any air pockets in here. I'm gonna start off by doing that. So this is a pretty hot load. I went a little heavy on the MEKP just because of the temperature. So I got to kind of work hopefully pretty quick. But what I'm doing is I'm just, first off, I'm filling in that crevice right there, that little, it's not a gap, but just trying to keep from getting any air pockets. Next, I'm going to go and start here. Just kind of start there and force, as I push the spreader in, it'll kind of force the filler into that gap. Now this is not, I'm going to go over this again, but I'm just trying to fill in here. You notice I taped up where I didn't want any filler to go, and that's basically just to keep filler from going places I don't want it to go. It's as simple as that. All right, now I'm going to work this little corner here just a little bit. All right, now work the corner in the back. Now start up here, do the same thing I did before, kind of fill in, starting from the center and working my way up. Now that I'm here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come across the top here. Just kind of smooth it out. I'm probably not completely filled in, but that's okay. All right, I'm going to stop right there before I wind up screwing things up. I said I was going to stop right there. Okay, stop. All right, I'm stopping. All right, let me pull the tape real quick, because it's easier to do this now versus after the filler hardens. Okay, now let's talk about the filler. So what this is this basically, a little extra there, no problem. This is basically, for lack of a better way to describe it, this is Bondo with a lot of aluminum in it. So basically it just creates I guess you'd call it a more stable mixture when it's thick. When Bondo gets to the point where it's more than, well, sometimes even like a quarter of an inch thick, over time you can get cracks, you can get all kinds of problems in it, and it shrinks. So what this does is it kind of stabilizes that, and it allows you to go with a thicker mixture to fill in basically things like this, joints like this. And what I'll do here when this cures is I'll just come back, I'm going to start off by sanding my corners, because that's what I'm worried about today. But I can just go back with the DA, knock this down, and I will have to come back over and finish it with regular Bondo, but with regular Bondo it'll just be a very, very, very thin skim coat. So let's let this cure, and then I can work on the edges. The back window is in as well. Let's see, nothing remarkable about it. There's a couple of scratches on the window. I'm trying to see if I can polish those out. Other than that, it went in just like the windshield did. No real problems. I did run out of the trim clips. I can't put the trim in. I just didn't quite have enough to do both the windshield and the back glass. I can get to these, so it's not a problem. So I've got an order of those coming in. Other than that, so other than being able to put the trim on to test it, but I'm not too worried about it. So let's talk about what happens now. So what's next? Bodywork. I really didn't want to start the bodywork until I had essentially the car buttoned up. And I'm to that point now. I can close up the interior, don't have to worry about dust getting everywhere. Well, mostly. But I do have a few things I need to do before I can really start that. And not in order of importance, I still need to finish the door panels. That's down the road a ways because I need a break from interior. Next week, you're going to see me work on the windshield wipers. Haven't really touched on that subject, and I've got kind of a integrating old and new systems on that. Another thing that I'm going to work on next week is I'm going to see if I can put power mirrors on the Firebird. So, and I mean not the old, move the little weird thing, lever jobby on the driver's side like the old system had. I mean integrating the actual power mirrors, driver and passenger, from the 4th gen Camaro donor car. Well, that's going to do it for this week, guys. Made a lot of progress on the Firebird. I'm pretty happy with where it's at. Certainly appreciate everybody tuning in every week. Thanks you guys for supporting me. Please like, share, subscribe, notify, eeny, meeny, miny. You guys know the drill. We'll see you next week. Everybody, have a great day.